to MGTOW or reflective on MGTOW. However, I had a number of people request that I make a video on the attacks on France and all that stuff. And I do have a perspective which I haven't heard from other people who've made videos recently about these attacks and the other issues related to them. Now, because I have a job and I also go to school full time, I can only make a few videos a week. And usually by the time I get around to making a video, it's more or less been covered by other channels to the degree that I don't feel I can add anything new or unique to the conversation, so I don't really make a video on it at all. However, on this issue, I haven't heard this particular view explored, so I actually think I have something to add in this case. Now, let me also make the point that I am an anti-nationalist and anti-racist. What this means is I don't care about those things, I don't identify myself through those lenses, and this is going to have a large impact on how I perceive these issues. You know, the attacks on France happened, a lot of people died, it's very sad. You know, I've made several videos about the traditionalism, egalitarianism cycle, change the name of it, where I talk about how societies go through these stages, and once they reach the feminism stage, they collapse, and then they collapse back into a patriarchy. And that's what we're seeing. Europe has become very feminized. You know, North America, the West, has become very feminized, very gynocentric, overly gynocentric. And the values of a gynocentric, feminized society are feminine values. I have to talk about something called the progressive stack, and it's maybe a term you've heard before. It basically ranks minorities and those who are oppressed. So you could tell who's higher or lower on the stack based on who they can criticize. So for example, feminists are allowed to target gay men. There were several articles put out a while ago, feminists attacking gay men as misogynists, where feminists are never accused of being homophobic. So by this we can conclude that feminists are higher on the progressive stack than the LGBT community. And you can do this for everything. You can see, like, is this group allowed to criticize black people, and are black people allowed to criticize them back? If it only works one way, then that person is higher on the progressive stack than black people, for example. There is only one group I can think of that's higher than feminists, and that's Muslims. No one's allowed to criticize Muslims. Absolutely nobody. Even though in the Islamic world, gays are murdered, women are beaten and raped, you can't say anything because you're an Islamophobe. No one's allowed to criticize Muslims. They are at the top of the progressive stack. And it makes zero sense if you look at it objectively. How can a movement which purports to stand for the rights of women and gays and all these oppressed groups put Muslims on the top of their stack when they oppress women and kill gays? I mean, that's just two examples. I mean, they stand counter to everything Western egalitarian gynocentrism stands for. And then you see the murders in France, and you see the terrorist attacks, you know, throughout the last 15 years. Now let's consider the cyclical nature of society. What you're seeing is the reassertion of patriarchy. And not the 1950s black and white nuclear family patriarchy. I'm talking the no shit, women belong to men as property, beat and rape them type of patriarchy. What you see in ISIS. And the West is talking about, we're fighting ISIS. They're not. No one in the West is fighting ISIS at all. In fact, they're not only not fighting ISIS, they're opening their borders wide open to quote-unquote refugees who are agents of ISIS. And I'm not saying all of them are agents of ISIS, but they're agents of ISIS within them. And this shit's going to have consequences down the road. Very clear, obvious consequences. A feminist society dies. It dies one of two ways. You either undermine the men of your society, who are the producers, the innovators, the leaders. You undermine them to such a degree that your society simply collapses under its own weight, or you weaken your men to such a degree that you're conquered. This is the great paradox of gynocentrism. Women desire strong men. However, their desires are also to exploit men. In the manosphere, especially within the PUA and MGTOW community, we call this the shit test. It's when a woman is testing her limits. And the only way to win is to not play her game. When a woman tries to shit test you, you call her on her bullshit. You don't put up with her. And the thing is when you give women what they want, they simply demand more, and they actually lose respect for you for giving in to them. The way to have their respect is to tell them to fuck off. Women are basically like spoiled children. You know, when a parent gives a child everything they want, the children hate the parent. You would think that a parent that gave a child everything they wanted would be loved by their children. But these spoiled brats who were given everything they wanted as a child, they end up hating and resenting their parents. They're almost always girls. I mean, boys tend not to be spoiled because of gynocentrism. We tend to throw boys under the bus and require them to take responsibility while we treat our daughters like princesses. So these girls are brought up to be princesses, given everything they want. They grow up to be spoiled, and they end up hating the parents that gave them everything they want. This is the shit test from parent to child. But it also happens between men and women, and even societies. So women formed feminism, and they make endless demands. The more society gives into feminism, the more they demand. They demand this, we give it to them, now they want more, and they want more, and they want more. Now they're talking about shit like men paying for women's tampons, and making it illegal for a man to lie about his wages in order to get a woman to sleep with him. So a man can't lie and say, oh, I'm a millionaire, and a woman's, you know, because she's a gold-digging whore, will have sex with him. That's rape. But a woman could wear makeup and a push-up bra, lie about her beauty, and that's, you know, that's nothing. You know, the double standards are endless. And they'll never end. If men give in to feminism on these issues, they'll simply come up with something even more extreme and more extreme. It's all a big shit test. And I'm not the first one to make this observation. I've heard it made several times by several different people within MGTOW. That feminism is just the world's biggest, most elaborate shit test by women ever. And who is winning that shit test? Who is at the top of the progressive stack? Who are even feminists not allowed to criticize? Muslims. The people who beat and rape women. How are they higher than women in a gynocentric society? It's very simple. Because they passed the shit test. They don't put up with feminism. The way you defeat feminism is you just stop putting up with it. That's what ISIS is doing. They're not putting up with no feminist bullshit. And they're being rewarded. They're being put into the front of the line when it comes to immigration. All these Western countries are throwing their gates wide open, saying, please, come in, overthrow our governments, take our women. We don't care if, you know, there's rape gangs. We don't care if, you know, all these shit's going on, the crime rate, the murder. We don't care. Please come in, overthrow our countries. Because you have passed our shit test. And that's all it takes. It's almost, they have a suicidal mentality. They want to be conquered. So there's a video that just came out yesterday from Bill Whittle on PJ Media called Failure of Intelligence, How Liberals Caused ISIS Terror Attacks. And he makes a lot of excellent points. But at the end of the video, he's talking about, like, you know, the West coming together. And how everybody's ready to fight ISIS except for the people on the left, the liberals. So what are the people? The people on the right want to go to war, but they have enemies on all sides. You're going to go to war with ISIS in the Middle East, while your own government, while all the people who stay behind, all they want to do is cut you off at the knees and leave you to die over there. You know, I recommended a video called Restrepo a while back in another video. Now in that video, you see this army unit holding this place called the Korangal Valley in Afghanistan for like a year to try to build this road. The road was never built. All the people who died, all they did was end up abandoning it later. It was completely pointless. These soldiers went in there and accomplished nothing because the government didn't have the balls to actually do what was required to win. If you're going to start a war, you need to be willing to do what is necessary to win. If you're not willing to do what is necessary, you don't start the fucking war. You just go back home. Go spend time with your kids or something. And then once the enemy does enough that you're ready to do what's required, then you go to war. So this is how Europe is going to fall. You know, the reason why Muslims are at the top of the progressive stack, the reason why no one's allowed to criticize them, not even women, not even feminists, is because they're genuinely afraid. I mean, that's the blueprint. You know, people on the right want to do the honorable thing, and they want to fight for a country that hates them and wants to stab them in the back at every turn and take their money, while they're opening up the doors and presenting their assholes to be fucked by ISIS. All these refugees being let in. In a generation, they're going to be the next wave of ISIS, and they're going to be in the country. What are you going to do about it? You're not going to do shit. This is how societies commit suicide. You know, at this point, this society deserves to die. You know, you give women the vote, you can never take it back because they're half the population. It's done at that point. And then once women can vote, the welfare state just blows up. Even if it existed in a small capacity, was limited, as soon as women can vote, boom, it blows up and it's everywhere. But once you have welfare, you're fucked. And the reason why is that the people who shouldn't be breeding are the ones who breed the most, because they're being supported by the welfare state. And the people who you want breeding, the smart producers, are not breeding because they're being overburdened by taxes to pay for the welfare. The people who are reproducing are the collectivists. They're the suicidal people. They're the people who are going to collapse society. And when they do, they'll just eat each other, or they'll die. And the world will not mourn them. And it's really our fault, I mean, collectively, the West's fault, for allowing this to happen. We never should have given women the right to vote. We never should have established a welfare state to begin with. And this is the price we pay. There's nothing we can do. It's too late. We've already passed the point of no return. You know, going to war in the Middle East half-assed isn't going to solve anything. You know, the Western governments aren't going to allow the Western militaries to do what's required to actually stop the problem. But if Western men refuse to do anything, and I see no indication that Western men are going to do anything, and if they are, it's only going to be a very small minority which isn't going to have the backing of their own country. So if you're in that group, if you're one of those men who's ready to defend your country, why? Why are you defending your country? Your country hates you. Your country does not support you. Your country wants to exploit you. What are you defending? Why are you defending this country in the first place? Just because your family lives here? Because, you know, the dirt and this is where you grew up? Is it just like a sentimental reason? Well, the dirt's going to be here. Your family's going to be here. What you're supporting, if you want to go to war, is the government. The government hates you, and I think you probably hate it back. So why are you going to go to war to defend it? I mean, just think about it. It doesn't make any sense. None of this makes any sense. In a sane, logical, reasonable world, none of this would be happening. We wouldn't even have feminism. But we do, and it's destroying everything. It's going to lead to a lot of people dying. A lot more people are going to die in Europe from terrorist attacks. After these refugees are settled, the terrorist attacks are going to get more frequent and more severe. And I'm not saying all the refugees are terrorists, but a portion of them are. And they're going to get resettled here, and they're going to commit more violent acts. And everyone's going to respond by bending over and presenting their pussies. Saying, please, please fuck us some more. Give me that hard cock. It's not their nature to fight back. They have a suicidal mentality. I don't even understand it. But they do. For whatever reason. That's all I have to say.